How to make a plate chainmail gauntlet from chainmail, pieces of leather and sheets of steel. This is a very long and difficult process that requires a lot of effort. As an example, I took Eredin's gauntlet from The Witcher 3. But unlike the designers who painted the armor of the Wild Hunt, I'm well versed in the practical side of the issue and will make some changes.
Human must die, human must die, the world is mine.
I tear off a piece of 30 HGSA steel, 1.2 mm thick, and start shaping it with the press. The press is controlled by the foot, using a special pedal. The pressure that is created is approximately 20 tons, and you need to be very careful not to get your fingers under the strikers. But in order to bend such a thin sheet, it is not at all necessary to use a press. You can do it with just hand tool. I use a propane and oxygen torch for heating. It is perfect for fast and localized heating of thin sheets of steel. Of course, it can't heat up large masses or volumes, but I don't need that. All that I need is a decimeter diameter spot. Before starting the work, I made a full-size model from plasticine in order to make paper patterns using this form. The glove consists of 24 parts, and it is very difficult to create patterns from the stretch without a three-dimensional shape. Now I start making the knuckles. The device is clamped in a blacksmith's vise. Unlike locksmith's vise, blacksmith's ones are not afraid of strong hits. So, all my adapters have special notches for fixing. The knuckles are finished in a general shape, and now you need to make a plate to which 4 fingers will be riveted. This detail is almost always present on real medieval gauntlets since the 14th century. If you rivet your fingers to the knuckles themselves, then there will not be enough movement when opening and closing the hand. And in order to fit this plate well, I punch everything together with heating. The bonus of the plasticine form is that it can be put on the hand and you can grab a weapon. This way it is possible to make the geometry very anatomical. Now I start making the knuckles of the fingers themselves. This is the same 30 HDSA steel 1.2 mm thick. The long plate gives me the advantage of holding the detail. The knuckle itself will be very small and difficult to work with, but I made my life so much easier with this life hack. Using the same principle, I made 4 more knuckles. I was even surprised by how easy it is to make small parts with this method. Usually, I cut out a small plate right away and work with it. The phalanges and fingertips are made of a 1 mm thick sheet. Here I decided not to use the magic of reptiloids, but to show how I cut out a part with scissors for metal, because I'm showing how to make a gauntlet and all there is on screen is some editing magic. After shaping, I weld the joint and then polish the weld seam with my finger. The last phalange in the shape of a cap provides reliable protection. Now, the iron part of the finger will rest against the handle of the weapon, and when hitting the nails it will no longer hurt. Now we have such a finger. Everything moves well, the fingertip is well protected. But if you hit the knuckle, it will hurt, because the force of the blow squeezes the finger between the armor and the weapon. Therefore, I make new details on the phalanges that will keep the finger in all-around protection. Now, the force of the blow is not transmitted to the finger, but is transmitted to the weapon in the hand. It's time to put all the parts together and evaluate the work done. I put on the chainmail glove and see how everything moves with it. The palm is now not afraid of cuts. The knife in the video is sharpened. The grip on the handle on the weapon is quite strong and comfortable. the mobility of the fingers is tolerable. Not ideal, but it allows showing ancient knightly symbols. Now I need to add edges and ribs. To do this, I make a small anvil in the desired shape and forge the hard part. The only way to hold such a small piece was with 2 nails inserted into the knuckle holes. You can see how many punches it took me to hit one edge. But I will not bore you, because in fact there is nothing so complicated here, and it can be done with one blow without hitting. Now I shape the raised ribs, like on 16th century Maximilian armor. On the original, these ribs are directed not outward, but toward the body. As for me, it's better to do it all the same with a reference to real-life armor. This will not spoil the design. It's time I had to make one more device for forging round parts. At the bottom I have a spherical convex shape, and at the top there is a cavity. This is a reference to the design from the game. I have not seen this on real medieval gloves. But it should be noted that in the 16th century a lot of elaborate armor was made, and some of them directly imitated the clothes of that time. Although such armor was used only measuring digs, not for war, but my version will be quite functional. Now I'm doing the hardening. To do this, I heat the glove to 870 degrees and quench it in water. It's good that it's not oil, otherwise I wouldn't be able to make such underwater shots. After hardening, I temper it. To do this, I heat up to 300 degrees. I keep it at this temperature for half an hour and then dip it into the water again. By the way, every like fits the reptilian magic that I used to craft armor. And when the mana ends, the video does not come out for a long time. After hardening, there is a lot of solidified scale on the surface. I'm trying a chemical method to remove it. To do this, I stir the water with acid, 6 liters of the water and 1 liter of phosphoric acid. On the screen you see the scientific trial and error method. I don't know in what proportions you need to mix for the best result. But I googled that it's important to first pour water and then add acid to it, and not vice versa. And when the reaction to the scale started, some kind of gas was released, and it was impossible to stand over the bucket. Therefore, I moved the bucket to a powerful vent. In about half an hour, the solution gobbled up the scale, and I thoroughly washed everything with water. I decided that I won't polish it, as the authentic roughness of the surface will be lost. On the inside, I cover everything with paint, so that the glove does not rust. All armor must be painted this way, otherwise there will be rust from sweat that will stain clothes. Now it's time for the final assembly. I use flathead rivets with a diameter of 4 mm. I shape the round part of the outside. They did the same in the Middle Ages. And although today you can buy rivets with a perfect hemispherical head, I rarely use them. After all, then it will be necessary to rivet the armor from the inside, and this is not always convenient and not always possible. And the rivet turns out to be the same uneven shape as those that have been preserved in museum. If you look closely, the museum armor is all a little crooked, and there are many traces of handmade work. I'm from Ukraine. I see the mission of my work in supporting our defenders and injured civilians. Now, all free funds from Patreon or one-time donations to PayPal that you support me with, I transfer to volunteers I know, and they buy the necessary things for the military, doctors, and so on. Surely, you know that the war has come to us. I'm lucky, I'm relatively safe, and I have both electricity and the internet, so I can make videos. Our entire night and sports reenactment movement is now actively opposing rascism. Someone from the first days of the war is already in the military. Someone is engaged in volunteering to cover the needs of the military or civilians in trouble. With my creativity, I plan to collect donations to help my friends. Many I know personally. Therefore, I leave my details for those who wish to help. The gauntlet is finished. Now I need to check everything. I put on a chainmail glove. Of course, I did not do it myself, I just bought it. These are also used when cutting meat. A small test shows it is possible to hold the weapon in the chainmail glove. But to be honest, it is quite uncomfortable. I'm not showing this with my face, but I can't say I'm holding the weapon perfectly. And with these blows with the mace, I know that it is not pleasant. to be honest. Of course, it will protect your bones from breaking, but it's quite uncomfortable. But if you wear a soft leather glove, the grip is much more comfortable. And it is easier to hold and control the weapon, and with such padding, I feel better. The tips of the fingers don't feel anything due to the caps. The hits are felt on the knuckles and the rest of the plates.